The Hey Eddie podcast is brought to you by looking for a way to greet your friends? At Judas's Greeting Card Company, we specialize in kisses, hugs, and friendly waves. Our motto is, a kiss means you really care. We offer birthday kisses, good to see you kisses, and our most popular option, the I'm definitely not about to betray you to an angry mob Wait, actually, that one sounds really bad. You know what? Never mind. This was a terrible business idea. Judas's Greeting Card Company. We're closing down immediately. If you've already been betrayed by a friend, we're very sorry. That's awful. Not our fault, though. Okay, maybe a little our fault. We're closed now. This is the Hey Eddie podcast. I'm your host, Cousin Michael. The Hey Eddie podcast is dedicated to helping kids like my cool cousin Eddie learn about the Bible and learn important lessons about God, about Jesus, and about life. The Bible is indeed God's gift to kids, a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. On today's episode of the Hey Eddie podcast, we're going to be studying Mark chapter 14, verses 32 through 52, in a lesson titled, The Hardest Night. This lesson will teach us that real courage isn't the absence of fear, it's trusting God through the fear and saying, not my will, but yours. Our key memory verse is Mark chapter 14, verse 36. Abba, Father, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. Hey Eddie, have you ever been so scared or so sad that you didn't know what to do? Maybe you were about to get a shot at the doctor's office. Maybe something really hard was happening in your family. Maybe you just felt overwhelmed and wanted someone to be with you. Well, today's story shows us that Jesus felt that way too. On the night before he died, Jesus was so distressed, so overwhelmed, that he fell to the ground and prayed. This is one of the most emotional moments in the whole Bible. It shows us that Jesus at his most human, and it shows us what real courage looks like. Ready? Let's go. After the Last Supper, Jesus and his disciples walked out of Jerusalem, crossed a little valley, and went to a garden on the Mount of Olives called Gethsemane. The name Gethsemane means olive press. It was a place where olives were crushed to make oil. And on this night, Jesus himself would be crushed under the weight of what was coming. Jesus told most of the disciples, "Sit here while I pray." But he took 3 disciples with him, Peter, James, and John. These were his closest friends. They had seen amazing things with Jesus. The little girl raised from the dead, the glorious transfiguration on the mountain. Now they would see something different. They would see Jesus in agony. As they went deeper into the garden, something changed in Jesus. Mark says he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. Jesus told his 3 friends, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch." Overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. That's how heavy this felt. Jesus knew what was coming. He knew he would be arrested, beaten, mocked, and nailed to a cross. But there was something even worse than the physical pain. Jesus was about to take the punishment for all the sins of the world. He was about to experience God's judgment, not for anything he did wrong, but for what we did wrong. That's a weight no one else has ever carried. Jesus went a little farther, fell to the ground, and prayed. Listen to how Jesus prayed. Abba, Father, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. Abba is an Aramaic word that means something like daddy or papa. It's an intimate, loving word. Even in his darkest moments, Jesus talked to God like a child talks to a loving father. And what did he ask? He asked if there was any other way. Take this cup from me. The cup was a symbol for what Jesus was about to go through: the suffering, the death, the judgment for sin. Jesus wasn't pretending this was easy. He wasn't acting tough. He honestly told his Father how hard this was. But then he said the most important words, "Yet not what I will, but what you will." Even though Jesus didn't want to go through this pain, he was willing to do it because it was God's plan. He trusted his Father more than he feared the suffering. That's what real courage looks like. Not the absence of fear, but trusting God through the fear. Jesus went back to check on Peter, James, and John. And what did he find? They were asleep. Jesus had just told them he was overwhelmed with sorrow. He had asked them to stay awake and keep watch, and they couldn't even stay awake for 1 hour. Jesus said to Peter, "Simon, are you asleep? Couldn't you keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Peter wanted to be loyal. He had just promised he would die with Jesus, but his body was tired and he fell asleep. Jesus went away and prayed again. Came back, asleep again. Prayed a third time. Came back, still asleep. 3 times Jesus prayed. 3 times the disciples failed to stay awake. They didn't realize how important this moment was. They didn't realize temptation was coming and they needed to be ready. Finally, Jesus came back and said, "Enough! The hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let's go. Here comes my betrayer." And right then, while Jesus was still speaking, Judas showed up. But he wasn't alone. He came with a whole crowd of men carrying swords and clubs and sent by the chief priests and religious leaders. This was basically the temple police force, ready for a fight. Judas had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." A kiss. In those days, a kiss was a greeting between friends. Students would kiss their teachers as a sign of respect and love. But Judas used that sign of friendship to betray Jesus. He walked up to Jesus and said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. And the men grabbed Jesus and arrested him. One of the disciples, we learned from another gospel it was Peter, pulled out a sword and swung it at one of the men, cutting off his ear. But Jesus didn't want to fight. He said, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I was with you, teaching in the temple courts, and you did not arrest me. But the scriptures must be fulfilled." Jesus wasn't a dangerous criminal. He was a teacher. They could have arrested him any time during the week, but they came at night with weapons because they were afraid of the crowds. And then Mark tells us the saddest part. Then everyone deserted him and fled. Everyone. All the disciples who had promised to stay with Jesus, they all ran away. There was even a young man following Jesus who was wearing just a linen cloth. When someone grabbed him, he wriggled out of his clothes and ran away naked rather than be caught. Total panic, total abandonment. Jesus was now completely alone. So what does this mean for you? First, Jesus understands when you're scared or sad. Jesus wasn't pretending when he said he was overwhelmed with sorrow. He really felt it. So when you feel scared or sad, you can talk to Jesus about it. He gets it. He's been there. Second, it's okay to ask God for help, but trust his answer. Jesus asked God if there was another way. God said no, and Jesus trusted him anyway. When you pray and God's answer isn't what you wanted, you can still trust that he knows best. Third, "Not my will, but yours," is the hardest and best prayer. Real courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about trusting God even when you are afraid. When something hard is coming, you can pray like Jesus did. "God, I don't want this, but I trust you." Fourth, stay awake and pray. The disciples fell asleep when they should have been praying. Don't let that be you. When hard times come, don't zone out. Pray. Ask God for strength before you need it. Fifth, even when everyone runs away, Jesus doesn't. The disciples abandoned Jesus. But guess what? Jesus never abandons us. Even when we fail him, he stays faithful. He's the friend who will never leave you. So the next time you're facing something hard, remember this garden. Remember Jesus falling to the ground, overwhelmed but obedient. Remember his prayer, "Not my will, but yours." And know that the same Jesus who walked through that dark night is walking with you through yours. This has been the Hey Eddie podcast. I'm your host, Cousin Michael. Remember that the Hey Eddie podcast is dedicated to studying the Bible and learning important lessons about God, about Jesus, and about life. Today we discussed Mark chapter 14, verses 32 through 52. Tune in soon for another episode of the Hey Eddie podcast, where we'll study Mark chapter 14, verses 53 through 72. Love you, Eddie.